Sonic Talk.
Hello and welcome to Sonic Talk number 414. 414, of course, is the legendary AKG microphone. We might talk a little bit about that for later because I did bother to do some research on the number of the show. We're streaming live today, Wednesday the 5th of August, and you can watch us recorded on YouTube and via iTunes and all the places where you get MP3s. If you want to watch the video version, it'll be on YouTube. If you want to listen to the audio, it's on iTunes. And don't forget, subscribe. Subscribe, A, to the feed, and B, to YouTube, because we've got a lot of content going up as well. I posted the part 2 of the Roland JDXA. We've also got some Boomstar Eurorack modules to go up. And I think we've got a review of the Cakewalk Rapture Pro synth. Plus, I've got this coming up, which I've got to review before I go on holiday, which is the Arturia Beatstep Pro. But that's enough. I want to say thank you very much to everybody for joining us. Thank you in the chat room, which is, again, a fulsome chat room. I'm very pleased to see. Nice to have everybody there. In fact, they're improvising the old theme tune over the new credit sequence. How sweet is that? That's amazing. Anyway, thank you for joining us. I think I said that already. And also want to say thanks to our sponsor, iZotope. iZotope, of course, will be giving away, as is their wont, usually about halfway through the show. We've got a competition results from last week where we gave away a copy of well, I say we, I mean they gave away a copy of Trash 2, and you can also enter again for another chance to win a copy of Trash 2. Thank you very much. Right, let's start. I'll start with Dave Spears, because we haven't had Dave in for a little while. Dave Spears from GeForce Software. He is joining us from his synth cave out there in GeForce HQ, where I'm sure he's masterminding all sorts of fabulous GeForce products. Am I right, Dave?
Might be.
Might be. We know Dave is very cagey about any sort of release schedule or any kind of such matters, so I know I won't get any information anyway. How are you, Dave? Good?
I'm all right. Yeah. Wasn't I on it last week? Or was I not? I can't remember.
I can't remember either. It all blurs. After about 200, I can't remember anything. In fact, we've probably covered all these topics before, a matter of weeks ago. But I hope not, because I'm kind of getting snowblind there. We also have Mr. Corey Banks from B-Board Tech Report, who joined us again. He's obviously on holiday. We haven't had him for ages, and then two come along at once. It's fantastic. Good to have a bit of Corey continuity. How are you, Corey?
All right, man. Doing good. Great to be here. And Dave, you were on last week.
Oh, thank you,
Oh,
Corey.
thank you.
So Corey hasn't been on the show as much, so therefore he can remember these things.
Yeah, I can remember a little better since I get two in a row and then it'll be a long skip. So, yeah, I remember everybody was there last week.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Corey, as well. And also, we have a new guest this week in the form of Mr. Ty Unwin. You will see there he's, I think he might have out-synth caved Dave, actually. Ty is I guess a TV music composer from your credits anyway. I'm sure you've done much more than that.
Yeah, but essentially it's mainly TV. Yeah.
Right, okay. And you've got a nice room full of, I'm guessing a lot of electronic sources there, because is that the sort of thing that you're known for?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that I'm actually known for is kind of big drama docs and kind of big orchestral stuff with kind of electronica in the background, and so, which is fine, and a lot of that is in the box, but I'm also a bit of a, not collector, but a bit of a gear junkie.
Again, I can see some lovely stuff.
I have an addictive personality.
I can see some. Is that over your shoulder there? Is that actually a System 55?
It is.
Wow.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, it's one of the new ones that have just appeared.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to play with it much?
Not that much, to be fair, because of deadlines. I mean, that's the problem of any TV composer. It's normally deadlines. But I've had a good play with it, and I'm kind of learning 1970s technology and terminology. That's the main thing. I mean, I'm sitting there with S triggers, kind of proper. Yeah. These cables that I'm sure you're not going to be able to go to Maplin's and buy them. So they give you a big bag full of S triggers, and trying to where does this go and what does this do, and the manual you get with it, you get a reprint of the original manual, this hardback, and it's another world. I mean, I've done synths for years, but it's completely different. For Dave, I'm sure this is second nature, but for me, I'm kind of learning I'm learning
And I
when
think,
it comes to modular.
I think also I know about you because Robert, you're a mate of Robbie Broneman's, who's a regular guest
Yes.
on the show, and he said that you also were the proud recipient of a Schmidt as well, which is really quite exciting.
Yeah, I mean hang on.
Lordy, that's
Nice.
a big boy. Wow.
It is a very big boy, and it's what's they do?
Stick them up.
No, it's I can't explain just how fantastic it is, to be honest with you.
Do you find you get a lot of use out of it then? Because I mean, the thing with something like that is it's just very difficult to kind of imagine how you could find space for it sonically.
Yeah, I think it's a different kind of beast. To be fair, it's just different. And I in terms of using it in earnest, I mean, I've only had it now for 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. And it's an instrument in itself. I mean, it is absolutely fantastic. The versatility of it is immense.
Yeah, well,
immense.
when we did that walkthrough with I've forgotten the name of the chap now. That's terrible. At Mesa, and we went through the sort of the oscillators and the fact that the different oscillators that I think they're 4 or 3. I forget which.
There are 4 oscillators. 1 and 3 are very similar. 2 is a kind of subset which is made to integrate with the rest of them. 4 is essentially kind of whatever you want it to be, but it's essentially 6 ring modulators that you can assign to anything, to any other oscillator, and that's before you get to the filters, of which there's 5 filters, and you know it's ridiculous. I was saying before, it's essentially like a modular. It's like a polyphonic modular. It's fantastic.
Wow.
And so versatile. I mean, just in terms of versatility, it's 1 minute it can sound like a Jupiter 8, the next minute it's honestly, it sounds like a DX7 the next minute, and then the next minute it sounds like a VS, and you know, it's an amazing
really
machine.
Versatile, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
really versatile. I'm very lucky. Yeah, very lucky.
So have you managed to get that on any soundtracks yet? Do you have
Not
a moment
yet.
where you go, oh, there must be a moment when you're going to go, I'm determined. I don't care. It's going to get there somehow.
Do you know the problem actually is that you get your schedule in as to what you're doing when, and you sit there shaping, you know, what instruments you need to use and what soundtracks. And I've sat there since I've had it, and since I've had the 55, just sitting there going, come on, I must be able to squeeze this into some kind of period drama, and it's not going to work. So, but yeah, and I'm just quite expecting to send some tracks down, the director get back to me saying, yeah, we really like it, but
what's that synthetic sound?
all those octave synth bass lines, we're not sure if they're appropriate for 1742 Vikings. And so
I was just looking at your very impressive and probably not even full discography on IMDb.
That's
and
so out of date.
Is it? Well, I mean, there's a lot of historical stuff. Romans seem to be a speciality, certainly looking at the top. Is that, I mean...
Roman, Vikings, space, those 3.
Big dramatic themes, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's...
what's that touchscreen type thing in the corner by you? Is that a slate?
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the Raven. That's the MTI Raven, yeah.
Ah, and how'd you get on with that? Because I mean, people have been sort of split about the way that they feel about that.
Yeah, it's difficult for me because I run Nuendo, and so my main thing is I've got the Euphonics MC Pro there, so that's my main interface.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of, you know, that I'm really big on, and the plan was to get one of the big Ravens, but they still haven't implemented the Nuendo software for it yet. So essentially I bought it now 18 months ago with the promise that Nuendo and Cubase was going to be, you know, in a couple of months' time, and I still haven't they still haven't done it yet. So at the moment it's great, but it's just literally a one-touch screen,
right,
which is great for the mixing panel on Nuendo, but
yeah, I can imagine.
I can't make any real comment about the integration with Nuendo yet because they haven't done it.
Ah, well, hopefully that will come soon. I'd just like to point out that my synth is that keyboard you can just see there in the corner. That's a Jupiter 6. That's the best I can do for now. But there are others, but it's perhaps too far away. I need to bring it forward in there. Corey, I'm looking. Frankly, I can't see a single synthesizer in your background. What are you thinking, man?
Oh, maybe I need to turn it that way a little
there
bit.
he goes.
Yay.
Hooray. Is that a Fender Rhodes?
Yeah, it's a Fender. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So I have a couple of well, I have Fender. I actually got rid of my Prophet 8, and I got one of the classic samplers, a couple classic samplers over here too. If you may be able to see the ASR over one shoulder that is not currently hooked up, and MPC 62 over the other shoulder there.
Yay!
Well, any self-respecting hip-hop beat maker must have an MPC. In the same way that I've got an MS-20 lying around, which I don't fire up very often. You know, you've got to have something for the root. Do you find you use it much, or are you sick of feeding floppies in it, or have you had it SD modified?
I've had it SD modified. I actually did that a little while back. That's one of the first things I did. And I got it for a great deal. I upgraded the pads on it. Some MPC purists probably would never upgrade to like the thick fat pads on it, but I find them a little more comfortable. And every now and then what I'll do is I'll sample, if I'm sampling drums from records, I'll sample into the MPC 60, and then I'll use that in the computer or wherever else. It depends. I kind of use it just for, I guess, a sound design tool, more or less, to put that MPC 60 dirt on it,
right.
Whatever I'm using it with.
Okay, got you. So, and do you transfer the files over SD, or have you got another clever way of getting them out of the MPC via some other method?
Yeah, I just put them on the SD and bring them over. Yeah, and then sometimes what I'll do is once I sample things in there, I'll just resample it back into the MPC REN, into the MPC software. So then I'm in the environment where everything converges, and you kind of, I guess it's just kind of on the fly sound design at that point. So I do it a couple different ways.
Yeah, nice. Well, so Dave, got any new synths? While we're on the subject.
No, but I've just worked my way through a box of tissues.
I'm surprised that you haven't got any MPC stuff, actually, just because your roots are in playing drums, and that's sort of one of the classic rhythm making things. I mean, you have got an 808, so.
Yeah. No, I should. In fact, it's weird because back in the day, a lot of my stuff was kind of done on the 950. And I'd quite like to get. In fact, I found a ton of floppies the other day, and it was like, yeah, they had a load of weird stuff on it. I was really tempted just to see if I could nab one for a half decent price. But they are starting to go up. It's that 12-bit, that grungy stuff is getting hip again. Well, I guess it always has been in the MPC world. Certainly the EBAC stuff as well.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. Actually, I'll tell you what I fired up the other day. I fired up the Juno 106, which I've had in sort of semi-storage for a little while, just to kind of, because I wanted to see how broken it was. And I do remember there was somebody from Roland here who said, I'm sure our boys could sort it out for you. And I thought, maybe I'll get that sorted because, but the thing is what I remember as it, when I was using it a lot in remixes, it didn't really kind of float my boat so much. I mean, it had some really beautiful things, but then I fired it up the other day. I've just been reviewing the JDXi, so I've been in that world for a long time, which doesn't sound bad by any stretch, but you plug the 106 in and just go dum, and it's like, oh my god, that's amazing. And what's really interesting about that is it's like I've kind of become desensitized to the nature of some of the sounds of those classic synths, because I'm not using them every day, and even though the interface I remember, but that you could really hear there's and I use this this word a lot, charisma in the sound. You just go, bloody hell, that's really got something special. And also I recorded some audio in it yesterday because it was so broken, it was just making some really outrageously distorted and broken sounds. So might be able to use some of that, but I would like to get that fired up again because it sounds fantastic. You just throw a bunch of chords on it and you just think, oh, that's really lovely. Anyway, I think we had a show to do, and there were probably topics, but we've got a bit sidetracked here. I'll tell you what I did see. I mean, I did say that it was 414 week, and I found this article on Trust Me, I'm a Scientist, which is about the history of the 414 range. And I didn't realise that it had its roots in the C12. That's actually no bigger, that image, is it? So I may as well go back here. It started out as the C12. Now, the C12, I think in terms of the capsule size, possibly more than anything, And the C12 and the C12A are two of my favourite sounding microphones. And I know a lot of people talk about the Neumann U47s and U67s, but the C12, it really does sound absolutely awesome to me. And there's definitely something kind of very special about the presence and the sound of it. In fact, there was we reviewed a Universal Audio plugin. I can't remember what it was now. It was like the mics of the Universal Audio Studios and the C12, the stuff that was sampled with the C12.
Ocean Way.
And it sound and I remember that, and I was just putting a voice through it, and every time the C12 was the one that I went for. I don't know. I'm guessing, Ty, you're probably going to tell me you got a C12. I know a couple of people have that. They're not as rare as I initially thought, but.
No, I haven't, to be honest with you. When it comes to microphones, I used to do a lot of recording, and I used to have quite a nice collection, and then I just do less and less now. So, I mean, I ended up just getting a blue bottle and bought all the capsules for that, simply because it was kind of all the capsules sound different. And I'm not really precious when it comes to microphones, to be fair. I'm kind of very much, I've used very cheap microphones that have worked really well, and I've used really expensive microphones that haven't worked well at all. So I'm just kind of, I'm not kind of precious about them, but it's just, if it works and the atmosphere is right and that's good enough for me. As long as it's not noisy, that's fine by me.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's definitely true.
No, I don't have a 12, to be fair.
Well, I was just looking on eBay, and I just thought, I wonder how much they go for. And we're talking like a couple of £1,000 basically for us, or nearly 2,200. I know, Corey, is there any life? Well, do you find that they're certainly in R&B and that side? Is there a kind of golden? What am I looking for? Golden.
The type of
standard,
mic.
Yeah, for that. And does it?
I think a lot of people like to use Neumann mics. I don't know exactly. I can't think of exactly the exact mic, but I've never had one because they've always been a little too expensive. Like I said, there's a certain thing that happens with me, and I've often recorded vocals a lot less in the last year or so, just with the load of things that I have to do. But I can tell you, once I reach a certain threshold and the amount of money that I'm going to spend, then my mind switches to, but you could get a Synth.
Good man.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so
That's
not much. I know that there's a few out there that people use, but I can't think of the names of them though.
So, what about you, Dave? In terms of, because I know we've talked about mics before. I know you've spoken about the sort of classic Neumann sound, the U67 and U47s. Have you heard the C12? I mean, they sound great on pretty much voices. They sound awesome on, but also drum overheads as well.
It's funny. I wish I knew more about mics. It was a kind of. I remember in the old days, when we were going into like 2,000 quid a day studios, there was always that gopher running around, and the director of proceedings, or whatever he wanted to call himself, producer, would be going, "Oh, James, go and set up that whatever on that stand, and go set that up." And of course, bands used to kind of take the piss out of these people, but I really always thought it must be brilliant, because that knowledge, mics are just constant, aren't they? Everyone loves these particular old mics. And we've got a 47, which I absolutely adore, which we were really lucky to get hold of, but that knowledge remains kind of, forever, and it's not transient at all. I always like that. I like the 414, probably purely because it was the first mic when I kind of did the first pro studio. It was the first mic that we got hold of that you could class as pro, because everything before then had been like 57s and 58s. And I remember one night just kind of going, because in your head you think you can sing. And yeah, I remember my piano teacher kind of going, kind of humming these tunes. And she was always hideously out of tune. And I just thought, late one night, I kind of went, I'll just go in and record myself with the 414. And I came back and I was gobsmacked that it actually sounded somewhere half decent, and I could hold a tune, which was kind of weird. So I've always got a soft spot for the 414. They're very different now, aren't they? We used some, when we recorded that GX1, we used some to record the speakers, and they were very different sounding to my old 414.
Yeah, I think there is a very wide range of them, definitely. Okay, right. I think we should probably. What time is it now? Oh, we're doing all right for time. Excellent. But yeah, 414s. They still make them. That's the thing about them. But I think, as I said, you can still find them around the place. And there's also, I know that Will from Goldfrapp's got one, but his was one that they made a stereo one apparently, and his is half of one of those, so it has a excuse me, it has a specific sound to it. And also you can buy, like you say, the same mic. Certainly when it comes to classic ones, and some of them just don't sound so good. It's just one of those things. I'm sure there's probably some kind of specialist somewhere who can deal with it and make it sound all it can be if you absolutely need to. Right, let's have a look. Let's have a look at another topic. No, I think I've got a web page. Yeah, this was literally this is sort of triggered by an article that Lagrange Audio, who I believe is in the chat room. Hi, Lagrange, thanks for joining us. I was talking about the whole experience of acquiring and getting into music now, how it's changed massively, and largely due to streaming, because there's no sort of creative transaction that's sort of happening, and I wonder whether or not there was that was offset somehow by the fact that it's much easier to discover, because obviously, discovery at the time when we were buying albums and physical hard copy was very much down to whether or not you could be bothered to go into the record store and do all of those things. Whereas now we can have stuff coming at us. I mean, admittedly, not all of it's great, at a sort of almost in an unlimited capacity. I mean, is there a great difference? I'll start with you, Corey, because I could see that you're away from the camera, and I wanted to catch you out. No.
No. I was actually...
No, it's all right.
Because actually on topic, when you were talking about albums, it brought up the fact that I had my brother and a lot of family here over the weekend. And it was a great time to see everybody. And, obviously, me being a hip-hop producer, I have a turntable here and a whole gang of wax and vinyl in the back here and some down here. And my brother, who's 14 years older than me, so, he was a teenager in the 70s, and I was such a little guy, but I would always remember him playing vinyl, and he would always, the artwork. So that always stuck out to me, and I would always open up the art, and I would be kind of mesmerized by the artwork and looking at all this different stuff. And so he was here this weekend, and I have a gang of soul albums and jazz and everything. And so he just told me to turn the stuff on and so he could play records. And he played records for hours and hours. And it was very nostalgic. And then I started looking at the vinyl again, like, like we used to. And I was like, that's the missing piece there. I mean, we can discover any and everything. We can get into a lot of new stuff that we haven't gotten into or that we maybe haven't heard of. But there's just something so special about, pulling up a stack or just pulling up anything, even if it's CDs. I mean, to Johnny Guitar Watson, something like that. This is like incredible music. Yeah, no doubt, Dave. It's just incredible music. And then to look at the artwork, this is stuff you just don't get.
That's a really interesting
crazy.
point. That's a really interesting point because, I mean, in many ways, album art and art associated with bands was a very powerful vehicle for contemporary art and what is happening in the visual arts, and you don't get that aspect of it. There's no association there, and maybe that's the thing that's missing, because in many ways, you go back to, I wasn't really into this, but all of that stuff, the Yes covers, what was the name of that artist who did all the sort of floaty kind of islands and stuff? That was Roger Dean. That was very kind of cutting edge for its time and got exposed to a much wider public because it was on these massive selling records. And I think that link is broken. Maybe that's got something to do with it. I don't know what you think about it, Ty. I mean, because I guess you're working in the visual arts, so it's slightly, maybe there is still more of a connection because your music is underpinning cutting-edge imagery to a degree.
It is, and so, I mean, kind of what I do is obviously based all around the, kind of the images. So there is that side to it that's, my day-to-day existence is, kind of relating visuals to music. Regarding this, the whole streaming thing, I mean, for me, it's... you're talking to kind of, I don't know if it's the right person or the wrong person, because as Dave well knows, I have an Amazon delivery almost every day of the week, big CD collector, and I've got thousands and thousands and thousands of CDs, and I still buy CDs, and I don't download. The only time I download is if things are only available on download, then I'll obviously download. But if there's a CD available, I have to have the CD. And the idea of streaming for me, and the reason that I don't do downloads is exactly the physical. It's the having something in my hands that it belongs. I own this music. And this music is mine. And then when you have downloads, I kind of own it. Do we kind of own this file that doesn't really mean a lot with no visuals? So that's why I don't really like that. But the idea of streaming for me is, it's the work of the devil. I can't even, I absolutely not. The only time I would ever use streaming is if I needed a reference point for when I'm working and someone said, we really like this kind of track. Can you go and give it a listen? I may then go to the streaming side. Then I may stream it. But that would be the only thing. But it would be a case if I then liked the music, I'd go, great, I'll now order the CD. So streaming for me is a complete and utter no-go. As downloading is much the same for me. So
that's very interesting. I know, Dave, do you think that, that whole notion of it, the disassociation of art or artwork, I'm not saying it's not there, but that it's much less prominent. Do you think that's perhaps why we're seeing much more extreme sound sculpting and really pushing the boundaries in terms of production, like how loud you can have the bass drum and how in your face something can be? Because it's kind of almost psychologically making up for the feeling that you get from the picture that represents the artist or whatever.
Yeah, it could be. It really could be. I used to go into, like I said a couple of weeks ago, I used to go into places like H&B. In fact, there was an independent record store in Reading where I lived, and I had a really good mate who worked in there, and that was always amazing because you could go in, you could spend as long as you want. They'd be playing stuff, you go, oh, who's this, and check it out. But honestly, I used to go into stores and buy stuff purely on spec, and if the artwork looked interesting or looked like something I was kind of getting into at the time, I'd just pick it up and it would be in a stack of stuff. I don't do that anymore. I thought what was really, there was a load of things that were fascinating about this icon, and I think Jason or LaGrange writes really well. But I like that idea of, instead of having this static image in front of you while you're listening to whatever album you're streaming, that you could have some kind of meaningful artwork. I know there's been this big campaign about credits and stuff. I have a real issue with, I'm very conflicted over streaming. I didn't do it. I refused to do it. I still do subscribe to iTunes. I downloaded tons of stuff off of there. I like the thought that that's actually sitting on a hard drive as opposed to in this. And it's not a cloud, people. It's not a cloud. It's just a server somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so it's really strange. But what really worries me is that, it's gone. And now I think I said to you in an email a few weeks ago, we now have fart apps that are considered more valuable than a music track. And I don't know how this industry's ever going to get back from free. I can't work it out.
Yeah, I hear you.
That said, however, having resisted it for so long, when I got the Sonos stuff, which I love, they had a free year or 6 months with Deezer, who I'd never heard of, so I went and had a look. First thing I looked at was artist royalties. And when it appeared that they at least paid something more than Spotify, I was kind of like, well, maybe I'll try that. And I do like that, and I do listen to that, and actually on the web they do a kind of, if you like this, then you can listen to this. You have to excuse, I'm very naive on these things because I didn't do the Spotify thing, so this may be completely ubiquitous. But then I'll go and discover other bands, and then I'll go to their website if possible and buy the CD, because for somebody in my position, it's really important to support the industry that sort of supports me.
Yeah.
And it worries me. It kind of concerns me. But also, conversely, I think artists have to shoulder a share of the responsibility or the blame, because there is this inherent desire to be liked.
Yeah.
And I think they're very susceptible to what Chris and I term as, give me all your stuff for free, it will be good for you.
Well, not only that, it's very easy. I mean, this I totally understand. I mean, we're streaming this at the moment, and our content is free. But when you get to the situation where, if I publish a review, like I've just published the JDXA Part 2, little plug there, review, I am always looking at the numbers on it because I think, well, I might have played a little musical noodle in there, or I felt particularly proud of a sequence I put in, and the numbers that those videos accrue are something that you're right, feed that kind of need for an artist or any creative person to get some sort of ego feedback. It used to be tied to revenue, and that's been disassociated, and that's what makes it difficult. So in many ways, artists are kind of almost have to get, they need therapy before they can get into the industry to sort of think, well, actually,
Attention.
I'm worth more than just the attention. Whereas the attention used to equate to money, and now it's much harder to draw those parallels. And that's actually quite an interesting thought there.
Attention has become a benchmark, which is very strange. I find that very wow. And even I do it. I'll put up a track that I've done on YouTube or something like that, and occasionally I'll go over and have a look, and people will be going, "You should give this up," or "It's very nice," or whatever. We always like the ones that are encouraging.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, it's a very strange. I like I say, I don't understand. I can't see where it goes from free other than freer.
Well, yeah, I suppose the thing is you've got to take things like it's almost like a social. There needs to be some social engineering in the same way that certain countries have very effectively created the notion that it's not okay to drink and drive, or things that are morally wrong. Are legally acceptable have then become, I mean, obviously that's supported with law, but there needs to be a sort of trend, doesn't there, in the way that it's sort of like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't think that's okay. Recycling, or what I mean, it's almost has to come to that level where the art becomes more valued, because I mean, yes, we can't all be Tracy Emin or U2. There are degrees in between, but there seems to be very little degrees in between of actually making a living from that level of notoriety.
Yeah, it's very sad.
Yeah, there's
really.
so much. There's so much in it with the. I mean, you got streaming, you got lack of all the artwork, you got lack of credits. It's such a microwave society. Everything has to be now, quick. How many likes can you get? But then there's a lot of substance missing, and I think it's reflected in the fact that sales for certain things have gone down dramatically. I don't really. I mean, yeah, it has a lot to do with the free thing, but I also think that where Dave says artists has to shoulder a little bit of responsibility too, because we're just not putting the amount of substance in the music anymore either, and that goes from whether it's kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit. I heard Chuck D from Public Enemy say once, and I paraphrase because I don't know exactly what he said, but he said something. As an artist, you bear responsibility to experiment. If you have 10 tracks on an album, you bear responsibility to experiment with at least 2 of them. You know what I mean? And then you can cater to your audience with most of them, and maybe do something that you really be responsible to your record label for, so to get a chart topper or something like that, whatever the case. But I just kind of think artists are not putting as much into it as we used to. And then from the business side, people are not getting as much development and all of this stuff, where you could take a album or 2 or a couple years or something to kind of build up to your first album and kind of get out in the clubs and perform and get in touch with people. Now we're just kind of doing, what's behind the screens, and we tap out a message here. It's all micro blogging. It's shoot a quick message. We don't tell anybody what went into making the music, because maybe a lot didn't go into it. But I mean, it's a cyclical thing. It's interesting nonetheless. But I do miss, back to the original, I do miss not just the artwork, but the credits. I was looking at an Isley Brothers record. It's so incredible to be able to read the credits and see, oh, wow, they worked with this person. I didn't know that person worked with them. Or, you always hear about the Black Beatle, and, that's Billy Preston. You know what I mean? He was in the studio playing stuff with them, and it became a joke. Oh, there's a Black Beatle. And I mean, I know people will probably go crazy about, a fifth Beatle at all, but just the fact of the credits and the stuff that people did in the studio behind the scenes, it's just great to know that it's engaging. And what I miss from the streaming, because I do streaming, but what I noticed is, when I'm streaming music, when I discover music via stream, I'm less engaged, much less engaged. I'll play the album once or twice, and then I'm on to the next. It's like before breakfast can be served, I've already changed my mind to something else. Not that I didn't appreciate it, it's just there's something missing with that physicalness and that information and that art. Parliament Funkadelic, I can't think of the artist's name, but this guy was crazy with his ridiculous looking artwork that he would do for them. And I mean, I love that whole thing. With hip hop, there's always been the culture of it, the rap, the DJ with the music, the b-boys with the breaking, the graffiti artists, and that art and music and the marriage of that whole thing, that's culture. And so we're stripping all of that down now, unfortunately.
I think
I totally don't know how to get back from that.
Yeah. Sorry, was that you, Ty?
Sorry, yeah, I think you're right. I think the problem is just the whole thing. It's just cheap now. I think the whole thing is cheap, and I mean it's meant to be a culture. It's meant to be a music culture, and it doesn't feel like a culture. It just feels like very, very cheap and nasty. And it was something that for me, music was never that way. And you know, I used to, exactly talking about the artwork and the credits. I was one of those people that used to sit there and just, as I used to start when I had no money whatsoever, in the sales section of HMV and all the shops, and I'd sit there, CDs for £1, £2, and just try and find any kind of link, whether it be good artwork or I knew who the guitarist was or a producer, and I'd buy that. And then it turns into a web where you go, okay, they've worked with them, and then you check them out, and then you build this entire web of stuff. And that's how I kind of discovered all these, you know, kind of these bands. And it felt like you're on a little kind of adventure, even if it was your own adventure to discover all these things. But that side of things just seems to have now just, you know, if someone's telling you what you would like. Do you know what I mean? It's that.
Yeah,
but to be fair, in terms of the cheapness side of things, it's no different in the TV industry, to be fair, in terms of doing things for next to nothing. Because a lot of people that are starting out writing for TV, they're expected to essentially do the job for nothing.
Right.
It's not like the music is any worth to these people a lot of the time. And the argument is, well, we'll either use some library music, we'll just pay them a flat fee, or we get someone to do it for nothing. And then they'll start claiming, oh, you get royalties, etc., etc. But you know, I mean, so I would hate to be starting out in that industry now, because you know I've never done a job for nothing, and it should be that way. Music is it
should be your choice
thing.
rather than the choice of the client. Yeah.
Absolutely. You spend months and whatever of your life on a project, and hours and hours and hours and hours, and to think that someone could then expect that to be free. And, you know, I think it's awful.
Yeah,
I
agree. It's interesting what you were saying about the idea of this kind of you creating a web and make those connections. Maybe, you know, with the new Apple's music streaming service, you know, they famously hired a couple of quite big name radio DJs to sort of curate some of that live streaming stuff. And maybe they actually also recognise that that's missing, because by having a personality, it used to be, you know, we used to have John Peel over here and those sort of things, that when there was a lot of music coming out on little labels that you would never get to hear, it's sort of in some way trying to provide that little bit of glue and that bit, you know, maybe there is, you know, maybe without realising it, they're actually trying, that gap is being plugged by having curators of music and what have you.
I think you're right, and it's the same as, you know, kind of I like about Amazon the fact that they do recommend, and iTunes. You know, I like the idea of the recommendations as a concept. That's fine. I think the slight issue I have with it is, it's awful to say in the good old days, but you know, there was a time when you were doing that, and it felt special, therefore, because you were finding.
And it's nice not to be thinking that the recommendations are coming from some algorithm.
Absolutely, you know? Absolutely. You know, it's nice that you were making those connections, and you made the effort. And when you put in the effort, the music suddenly becomes more special to you, rather than, as you say, everyone else has got that same recommendation.
Absolutely.
So everyone else is going to be discovering the same stuff, and it doesn't become personal to you. So.
Right. Well, for just in case we get too far down the grumpy old men of music industry.
Sorry.
No, I totally concur with you, and I think we've given this a great. It's a really interesting topic, but and I also think that you know, I want to say thank you to Lagrange for sending in that blog. In fact, if there's anyone out there who has a piece in them and they want to send it in for consideration, please go ahead. Just contact us via the site. Be very interested to hear your opinion, because it's always nice to get opinion piece. Because again, the reason is it's opinion. It's not an algorithmic basis. So, Dave, you look like you have something to say.
Yeah. I think to put it into some kind of perspective, I know that we all think our kind of youth were those kind of halcyon days and everything was great then and all the rest of it. And I don't think any of us here are Luddites by any stretch. But CR78 gifted me a book about 6 months ago, and I finally got time to read it on holiday. And I would thoroughly recommend it to anybody who wants to learn about the entire history of the music industry, particularly publishing. And it's by a guy, it's Simon Napier Bell, and it's that Tarara Bumdier, and it's absolutely well worth the £6 or whatever it is on iTunes, weirdly enough. No, or even you can buy it as hard copy. It's brilliant.
Didn't Simon Napier Bell manage Japan?
Yeah.
So he's one. In fact, I've seen his name associated with the old school management term of Svengali, which was a sort of somebody who was very much in control of the entire musical operation, artwork, connections, the production, everything. Right.
It's incredibly well written, and it just starts right at the beginning, and then just goes right the way through. You know, the advent of vinyl, and then all the way through, and the publishing stuff. It's just amazing. I mean,
all right. Well, that sounds really interesting. And also, if you're interested in, there's a brilliant BBC series called The Sound of Song, which is about the technology of music recording. I think I've spoken about it before, but I happen to see it on repeat on BBC4 in the UK. I don't know if you can get that internationally, but it's absolutely brilliant. It goes from the sort of the way that Edison shaped the beginnings of the music industry right through to synthesizers and everything else. Anyway, I should probably now have a message from our sponsors, which will be followed by the competition. And then when I press this button, it always takes ages to get going, even though I test it before the show. It's really aggravating. Come on. There we are. iZotope Trash 2. We want to say thank you very much to iZotope for sponsoring the show. Trash 2, of course, allows you to distort audio in ways you never dreamed of with the Trash module's 60+ distortion algorithms, and perfect for transforming your sounds into something you've never before heard. You can design your own unique distortions from massive to mild with everything in between. Let your tracks inhabit any space or object with the new Convolve module. You can find a new voice, make your audio speak and growl with 2 redesigned filter modules, each one featuring a new Val Formant filters for screaming peaks, node modulations and more. Start trashing your audio immediately with this extensive new preset library and an ear-friendly limiter that ensures that you don't blow anything up. As with all of iZotope's stuff, there's a lot of great tutorial information on how to use this incredibly deep plugin, and also a free 10-day demo. iZotope.com/trash is the place that you're going to be able to find that. So do download it, and once again, we thank them very much for their sponsorship of the show. And of course, as with previous weeks, last week we asked you to tweet out, let me see, what was it? It was Mashup Audio and Trash 2 to iZotope Inc. and Sonic State. And we have a winner in the form of Tim Prunchik. I hope I've spelled that right. His Twitter handle is Temporal Mix, @Temporal Mix. He apparently, I want Trash 2 on my tracks. So actually, now your wish is my command. The iZotope Fairy will give you Trash 2 in your inbox. All you got to do is contact us with your email address, and we'll forward it to the iZotope people, and they will make it so. So thank you very much for entering. And also, we do have a competition this week. Once again, iZotope Trash 2 is being given away. We need you to tweet out the hashtags shapeshifting and Trash 2 to once again to @SonicState and @iZotope Inc. So that's hashtag shapeshifting and the hashtag trash2 via Twitter to @SonicState and @iZotope Inc. We'll randomly pick a winner from the resulting entries. So once again, we thank iZotope for their sponsor of the show. It's very much appreciated. Excuse me. Right. This was something this is again is kind of, this is another really interesting thing. I think it is anyway. So this is this has been doing the rounds recently, and it's a fantastic 3D rendering of a new Volca image, which is the Volca mix. And it first showed up on Create Digital Music, where I think it came up via the Facebook group Volca Chat, or Volca Series, I think it is. It's an unofficial group. And there's a guy there called Chris Johannes, who is basically a fabulous 3D artist. He's rendered this up in 3D Studio, and it's the notion of this kind of micro mixer with built-in effects busing and a chaos pad for additional kind of modulation and stuff, and it just looks like a really cool thing. There's also, in fact, I might be able to, let me see if I can find this. There was another I don't think I've got it anymore. I was going to say there was another image that he's done of a sort of step sequencer for Volca stuff. And I just wonder whether any of this sort of thing makes sense. I mean, it sounds like a great idea. I don't know, Corey, if you've had a chance to play with any of the Volca stuff. there are elements missing, and there are things that would be. I mean, this looks like one, and it's got a lot of interest, so it might make sense for Korg to consider building something, and if indeed they aren't already.
Actually, I got to be honest. I haven't played with much of the vocal stuff, not for any long, like in a music store or anything. But I have the one thing I didn't like was the little twiddly knobs, and I have big fingers, so it just kind of makes for a weird experience for me. But I have seen people do some pretty cool stuff with it. I love the modding and stuff that people are doing with them. And I could see a Volca mix being a pretty good deal, a pretty good thing to go into that whole Volca series of things that people are doing. So I hope it's real, but I don't know, having a Chaos pad built in makes me think I'd be surprised if they did that because, that would push the price up, and they already have little small Chaos pads that you can get. So it'll be interesting to see if this is real.
Maybe so. I don't know, Ty, whether any of the Volca series has a little niche somewhere in your studio. Whether
it does.
It does. Oh,
I've got a key. I've got a keys and a bass, and no, they're great for what they are. They, everything has its place and everything has a sound, and they both, they do what they do quite well. And there are times when you need that thing that they have, and so no, I'm not against that kind of stuff at all. No, the Volcas are good, especially the key. The keys I quite like, and I hope they do make it. I hope they are making it, because I think it's a great idea. I really do, and I think having the Chaos pad in it would be a really, really good move. I mean, I've got a Chaos pad, and I use the Chaos pad a lot. And
okay. I guess for picture it makes sense. I mean, it reminds me of those days when I can't remember what the name of the plugins used to be, but they were designed very much for sort of gestural control of effects and things back in the day. I've forgotten the name of them now, so it very much fits in with that notion.
Yeah, no, anything with a kind of, I'm very much into kind of touchpads and joystick movement, and I'm a big fan of, there's a Neuron back there, which was all based around the kind of movement side of things, being able to record all the movements that trigger, kind of that play back. So, for me, Chaos pads is it's fantastic. And so to have one of those built in.
Just some more examples of it. That is, again, the 3D Studio render. I'm guessing you must have dropped that into the photo, but I mean, that is truly skillful bit of
it's very
3D
good,
modeling, isn't it? That is really awesome. And then I spotted this the other day as well. He's also done this, which is a kind of, he calls it, a Volca FS1, which looks like a sequence of step filter of some kind. It's got cut off and peak on every single step, and Midi in and out. Also, that they just look like they're real to me, and it's just a great idea. I know, Dave. Do you think? Sorry, go.
No, I was going to say I have to ask the question, because so many times you see these amazing 3D rendering of these fantastic stuff. And so much of the time I'm there thinking, why? Why? Because the amount of time and effort it takes to make these look so amazing. Well, some of them do look incredible.
To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if he's not going to get a bit of work out of it, because I was thinking, well, that's quite a good idea to kind of, if I want a mock-up of something, then I might go to him, because I'd remember that was really quite astonishing. Dave,
that's a good point.
Do you think any of this stuff actually is likely to influence the manufacturers? I mean, have you ever been in a situation where people have sort of mocked up, GUI ideas, or something along those lines that has made you think, actually, yeah, that's not a bad idea. Let's see if we can do something with that.
Perhaps certain parts of a GUI, but yeah, not the whole thing. No, I don't think that's really happened to us. I think it's funny, because when I first saw this, obviously I looked at the comments and it seems like it's not real, but once I'd kind of looked at it, it almost harks back to what Ty was saying about all of us kind of geeking out over these credits, in that what you need is somebody who's completely immersed in this scene, with the Volcas and all the rest of it, taking this stuff out live in order to find a solution to an issue that they're having using all of these things in a particular context. And that's what my first thought was, this is obviously somebody who's completely immersed in this scene, closely followed by, actually, they should give him a job. If they're not making this thing, they should just go, you know what, come in here. I heard that was a very similar thing with the original Chaos pad. I'm pretty sure it was. It was an idea of somebody who worked in the company, and they kind of went, right, you're promoted, you're now in R&D, which I think is a great idea.
Yeah, I think I noticed a handle. I don't know if he's still there. Some custom synth, who I think might be the custom synth who does those amazing hardware kind of customizations and taking other things and putting them into new controllers. And I know was involved in the Imposca controller and all of those things. And so that, you know, those people who have the ability to create these very realistic, because I mean, I suppose a lot of it's down to capturing the imagination, and if you can sort of show somebody a finished product, this is what I want it to be, then that part of it, they can go, yeah, that's great. Then that's almost one whole part of the design process that they don't have to think about so much. They just worry about the electronics. So maybe there is an aspect to that.
When we did the Fat Boy all those million years ago, this will show you how far things have come with computers and stuff like that. Chris said to me, we'd kind of done this. There was a mock-up in a Maplin's box, and the guy who was making it was like, okay, so this is just rough. What would you like it to look like? And at the time, I was using the TD10 V drums. So I want it to look like that. That's what that angled front and the nice curvy back and stuff like that. So we basically, I took a picture of it, which was on the worst low-res digital camera ever, and then printed the picture out and put that in a photocopier and then faxed that to the guy who made it, and it just looked like this kind of black blob. That was it.
And that's what you ended up with. I'd just like to say in the chat room, Sonic1276 said they got a job with Soundcraft on the back of a mocked-up MPC style controller he made. So I mean, there is, you know, I guess in answer, to Ty, that's what comes out of it, because I mean, if you're interested in designing industrial interface design for the musical instrument sector, then bang, there's a kind of you're going straight to the target, fantastic. Aren't you? I suppose.
That's absolutely, you know, that is amazing.
Okay, right. So Volgamix, right now this is another thing, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, Corey, as well. So. We talked about this before. This is
stems.
Native Instrument stems are now here.
Like Wave,
they are, you know, we talked about the announcement of them. Now they're actually released.
New way to perform. The stems format lets music producers split their tracks into 4 individual musical elements so that DJs can control each element independently. For example, you can play the drums from one track with the bass line of another, or layer percussion parts from different tracks into new grooves, or have instant acapellas and instrumental versions of your track.
So we're kind of aware of the concept of stems. I mean, obviously, if in terms of DJs, it makes a certain amount of sense, because it means that certain things are limited to 4 tracks. I don't know if that's 8 channels at the moment, because that looked like mono represented. I think there were 4 stereo tracks when I saw before. And they're going to be releasing the tool for creating the stems fairly soon. And it doesn't look like it's anything too difficult. I mean, it looks like it's basically just a wrapper. But it seems to be getting quite a lot of traction. I mean, noticed if you go to the web, there's a stems-music.com, which is the new kind of microsite for it. There are links to Beatport, where they already have a whole bunch of stems available. And, you know, this is just the featured one. So they've obviously been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to get these things into the stores ready for the big launch. And I know at the time we were sort of not sure. I mean, I know it's very easy to kind of poo-poo just the DJ aspect of it, but there are obviously quite a lot of other aspects too. I know, Corey, do you think this is something that's going to... is there excitement in the kind of rap, R&B and hip-hop kind of side of things for this to happen? I guess it's going to make combining and mashups a lot easier, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be big, especially with, I mean, not only for the DJs, but for producers and performers that go and use Ableton and all that kind of stuff. And we're already kind of seeing it with, I mean, I do a lot of reviews on sample packs and different things like that. And what some of the really good guys that are doing that stuff include are stems. So the stems will come up. Well, you'll buy, say, like a breakbeat kit, and obviously those are made from some guys commissioning a drummer and going into a studio and micing things in a really classic way and getting it going. But they're starting to sell those with the sample packs, and people are using the stems to do other things. So I mean, I think that's huge, especially in the way we perform and all the mashup sense. I think it's pretty cool. And it kind of brings a new element to the live music thing, and being able to do new types of music and just stuff that maybe you wouldn't think of otherwise. So it's kind of cool.
And I guess
it's a lot of interest.
I guess in many ways also, you know, because I mean, traditionally when you do finish mixes, you have to do mixes with and without things and what have you. I guess you could just do the whole thing and then you just switch off the vocals for the TV version for your playback or whatever. I know. I'm guessing, Ty, you know, when you present the music to TV companies, you're probably having to send them multiple layers, right, so they can rebalance, or do you try and get
a lot of the time it's kind of a combination of both, really. You tend to send stems, and you'll often just send a stereo mix as well. And I mean, personally, or surround mix or whatever, rather than just stems. It works both ways. So I mean, but yeah, I mean, stems as a concept is, you know, something that's we've been doing in TV for years. The idea of sending it down as one file, fair enough, it's only 4 tracks, but that in itself, it's a great idea. I mean, it really is great, because at the moment, you know, for those 4 tracks, we're having to send 4 files all time aligned, and so to just send it as one file is going to make our life 4 times easier.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, I suppose so.
If they're stereo, that's the thing. I'm not sure if they are stereo.
I think they must be, because you wouldn't have a vocal track and effects in mono.
No, you wouldn't imagine.
Even a DJ wouldn't put up with that sort of limitation.
Even a DJ.
I don't know, Dave. I mean, the thing that's interesting about this also is I noticed there's probably 20 and 30% markup on a stems version of a track. So in terms of, you know, you've got all these multifacets things, you know, the fact that we've got essentially a new format for selling actual music, as well as maybe delivering, as well as performing, as well as, you know, there's many aspects to this that actually could be pretty useful when it takes hold. And the one thing I did notice is in the beginning of that, it says an open format. So I'm thinking that, you know, Native Instruments are, I'm guessing that Native Instruments aren't kind of tying this to only their technology. So it means if it's widely adopted, then this thing could be really useful in terms, you know, be incorporated into DAWs. You could have a stems track. You can have all sorts of things that maybe you could bring into play.
For me, very similar to Ty actually, but not musical, but more sound design stuff. I'll always supply stems of the stereo or the surround and the individual parts, because if the because 9 times out of 10 I'm working for an artist who will be credited as the executive producer, so ultimately the decision will be his as to, you know, when I'm doing sound design stuff, it'll be made up of component parts, and I'll render those tracks out and kind of go, okay, so this is how I think it sounds, and then they'll put it in the context of the movie and go, that sounds crap, I'm never using you again, or actually we can rebalance this.
Can we just use the left-hand side of stem 1, please? Yeah.
Yeah, whereas I love the idea of this just being in one thing, and me going, right, okay, here's how I think it's a sham, and here's the other stuff. If you want to change it, you go ahead and change it. Makes real sense to me.
Yeah, well, and the other thing in this, they're already having support for it in Traktor, and their Traktor Control S8, D1 and F1 are stems ready. I'm guessing, you know, if it's just a question of MIDI control of these tracks, I mean, back in the day, you used to be able to do QuickTime movies with multiple audio files that you could then control programmatically. So it's not much of a quantum leap to be able to take it forward from there.
I can see it being really valuable in everything we talked about, but so we've all acquired these multi-track versions of classic tracks, but have any of us actually done anything with them other than listen to maybe a few things in isolation and gone, oh, that sounds great? I mean, when they did that Marvin Gaye thing, I was like, wow, you know, he used to lie down and sing, and he's still... In fact, I put his line in Melodyne just to see kind of how far out he was, try and analyse it that way, but I never did anything creative at all with any of it. So I kind of wonder, you know, particularly when you're saying that stem tracks with the stems have a slightly higher markup, I wonder who, other than DJs, is going to sit there and go, actually, I'm going to change this track. We all wanted to years and years ago. It was like, oh, I really want this. But I wonder how many of us actually do.
Yeah, I suppose that's a fair point. I mean, the other thing is obviously with the limitation of 4 tracks, I was thinking about this. I mean, surely what you could do is if you've got, you know, if you're working with a DJ software, you've got 2 decks effectively. Why not have the same track across with different sets of stems, just tempo synced, that you could then, you know, just then you get track 8 control of 8 stems, or 16 if you got, you know, whatever, depending on how many decks you've got lined up. So there might be other aspects to it, but I think I think the thing is it's almost in the same way as, you know, the way that we went from vinyl to CD. There was a perception of it's the new file format and it had a price premium. I wonder whether or not there might be, even though you might not ever listen to it in non-stems format, you know, you might not adjust it. The fact that then people will buy the slightly more expensive version just because more is better somehow. Do you know what I mean? It might actually at least increase some sort of revenue, and that's not a bad thing, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, right, I think there might be time for just one more topic, which is, this is lovely. This is a video by a chap called Special Head, who does a lot of videos. This is the Weird Wood Wolverton. The Anarchestra is a set of like 100 instruments made by this mad guy, Alex Ferris.
An individual invents a new musical instrument. But there is one man who has invented hundreds of them. His name is Andy Thurlow.
Oh, Andy Thurlow. Oh, there we go. Not Alex Ferris. I beg your pardon.
Each instrument is a one-of-a-kind handmade creation. Some of them mimic instruments we are all familiar with.
Bastard. There you go. You like that one, Dave?
And some look completely out of this world. Some sound out of this world.
Or you can play the spring.
I just think this is awesome. This is Anarchestra. This is basically, it's a group of 100 instruments that generally get installed in place. I think they're all tuned to the key of A minor, so you can basically just put them all in a space and have people wig out on them and play things. But they all look sort of fairly metallic. But he said he made these things because after a lifetime of music, I got really tired of everything sounding the same, which is just a fantastic, what a fantastic reason for doing something. I know quite often in the past we've done sort of, you know, single instruments where we go, oh, that's interesting. But this guy's made so many of them. It just seems like such a brilliant idea. I mean, there's a sample library right there, don't you think? I don't know. Are you Ty? I mean, obviously, I can see you've got a massive collection of synthesizers, but you also say you work in the box orchestra, that sort of things. Are you one of those people that's sort of always looking for new sounds because that's the sort of thing that makes you stand? Yeah.
Yeah, constantly, all the way. And this for me is heaven. That's fantastic because all of that kind of metallic stuff you can do a huge amount with, and with visuals and things. And there's for the best service on the engine, there's an engine library called Klanghaus, which is very similar to this. It's some German guy, I think, that makes these very percussive one-off instruments, very metallic, and there's already a library out there. But I mean, this takes me back to when I was at university. We had something called the Contemporary Music Festival, and there was this performance by these guys that had made, you know, a huge kind of installation with all metallic stuff, and I remember this was my first year, so we're talking almost 30 years ago, and you could buy a vinyl album of their performances. I use performances in inverted commas. It was interesting, but I remember just buying the vinyl with no other intention, just get it home and just sit there going through sampling just, you know, individual sounds and putting them across the keyboard. And through the wonders of 8-bit and maybe later 12-bit, I created my own library, which is essentially these kind of sounds, you know,
right.
And I had those, you know, so that idea for a library is incredible, but the instruments as themselves, I just think they sound amazing.
Yeah, nice.
So,
in the chat room, actually, where am I looking for? It went past now. Sorry, Gautier. Yeah, Gravity Feeder says Gautier with that, you know, massive smash did the fence playing thing. There was quite a lot of kind of found sound and instruments in that hit. So there is a place for it. And also part of the reason, perhaps, that, I mean, apart from the fact it was an absolutely brilliant song and vocal performances from the two singers, the fact that there were sounds in there that were a bit unusual kind of made a difference. And it wasn't sort of completely squished electro nonsense. So I mean,
yeah.
you know, Corey, you're always looking at sample packs and that sort of thing. Is there an appetite for this sort of thing within R&B and hip hop, or is it a bit too far out there?
I think with guys that are, yeah, for some it's just too far out there, but I think a lot of guys are getting more into just more experimental sound, and these are some of the guys that are now starting to venture into the modular world and bring that into hip hop and maybe R&B, but urban music nonetheless. And I know some guys who there's Flux 302. He did a really nice sample pack where he took a year and he was going to all sorts of junkyards and construction yards, and he would sample any and everything that clang, bang, the pop. You know what I mean? And he created a really cool sample library. So I think there is an appetite for that stuff out there. But it's more for the guys that want to be a little more abstract and they want to incorporate a little different sound into what they're already doing, or that maybe just kind of want to go veer off course a little bit, but still kind of be in their genre. I totally think this guy, a bunch of people should be calling him up. Native Instruments or somebody should be calling him up to do a sample pack. They would probably get eaten alive out there. They would love it.
I'll bet. I know, Dave. I think this is the sort of thing. It's like sort of Diego Stocco's work, isn't it? But kind of in metal and by a fairly out there looking hippie guy.
Yeah, but he was really articulate. And,
yeah.
I mean, it was. Yeah, I liked those pieces of sculpture actually, even beside the noise. It's funny how certain things can bring back memories. And for example, when I first saw this, I just remembered this fantastic joke about, my neighbour woke me up at 2:30 in the morning, hammering on my door. For God's sake, how inconsiderate! Bit of luck. I was up practicing my drums. And I kind of thought, yeah, because imagine living next door to this guy. It'd be really funny. And then I started thinking, well, him and Diego living next door to each other would be really entertaining. It's just be like hammering and setting light to stuff and hammering and setting light to more stuff. But I really like this. He had I love that idea about, I've heard, after a lifetime in music, all this stuff I'd heard, and I wanted something different. I love that idea. And when I've been working with certain people, I think I've said before, there's a rule in that you don't, if somebody ever starts to play something, you never go, oh, that sounds like Hendrix, or that sounds like so-and-so, because immediately you've kind of categorized it and you've put it in a compartment and you've stifled that person's creativity. And what we'd also like doing during that thing was bringing young people into it who don't have those kind of reference points. And I've always referred to it as, they don't have that baggage, which I've always felt slightly uncomfortable with because it's not really baggage. And when he said it was the burden of expectation, wasn't it? And I thought that's such a brilliant phrase. When he introduced musicians to it, they played it, particularly as it's all tuned to A minor. And the A minor is such a perfect key, isn't it? Because it's a bit doomy, a bit depressing, and yet they adapted to it without this burden of expectation. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I know that Eno's a big fan of getting people in and not letting them listen to the track that they're about to work on, for instance, and just go, right, it's in this, it's here's the tempo, here's the click, might tell you what key it's in, go, so that you get that completely unfettered kind of thinking on your feet, sort of straight from your core brain kind of thing, which as a session person must be absolutely terrifying. Imagine you get a call, well, come and play for me. You think, I better swat up, better kind of get prepared. And it's like, that's actually the last thing he actually wants, is for you to be prepared. You must be completely unprepared. That's the point, just instinctive.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting idea.
I can't say the last.
Sorry.
I think with the last couple of David Sylvian albums, I don't even think they had the key or the tempo. I don't think.
Really?
That was Zappa, wasn't it? Yeah,
was it?
Zappa was the same. Yeah. Zappa and the lot
I know.
Just
I know.
Go.
Yeah, and definitely on the last one, there was. I don't think there was any click, any key, anything. They weren't allowed to. I think.
So how would you do that?
Although to be fair, it does sound like it on occasion. But that's fine. I'm a big David Sylvian fan, and I'll be there to the end. But he's, it's difficult sometimes. But
I can imagine. I did try and find out if there was a place where you could go and visit this and kind of be involved, but there was no information on the website that I could find. I did find the website. The website is anarchestra.wordpress.com, and he's got, it does seem to get updated reasonably regularly, so maybe there'll be news of when it's going to be there. And there's music and stuff that you can get made on these things. And so I think, as a music with 100 instruments, I mean, that is more than most of us have at our disposal, apart from probably you and Dave, Ty. So, in many ways, that's more than enough, right? If you've got all the frequencies covered, right?
Oh, only 100.
Only 100.
Yeah.
But after all,
Yeah, but he made those.
Yeah.
That's the big difference. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, how do you come up with 100 different, original ideas?
That's a challenge in itself.
Yeah, exactly. Never mind making them; it's just having the ideas for them. It's incredible, it really is.
Yeah.
But as Dave said, they look amazing. To be fair, I'd happily have any of those in my garden as a piece of sculpture because they just look incredible.
Yeah.
Funny what Corey was saying about people like Native Instruments approaching them. There's somebody actually not far from you, Nick, who makes these amazing audio sculptures who I've been to see on numerous occasions. When we were doing Iris, I was like, it'd be really cool if you contribute, because actually there's an entire story of the sculpture and the sound, and it works a lot with spherical objects, and there's a reason for that. It's kind of cosmic. He's not the easiest person to get along with, but he's really, really talented. But I've never ever, I think I've told like 2 people his name, because the real paranoia is, of course, once it's out there, as much as I love his work, once it's out there, he's just going to be approached by all sorts. And I actually said this to him at one point, obviously if you did this, and obviously you get paid for it and whatnot, but obviously if you did this, then you're going to start getting phone calls, because actually I could see you kind of becoming the UK version of Diego Stocco. And he's just like, I don't want that. That's not what I do this for. I don't want any of that. I was like, okay.
It's interesting, isn't it? Especially what we were talking about, how we're as creative and artists, we're always looking for approval and our likes and our YouTube counts, and that's completely the opposite of that guy. Well, fair play to him. Definitely.
That's pretty cool, actually, because he does it just for the love of the art, and he loves what he does. That's pretty cool and admirable, actually.
There's one particular sculpture where there's certain things that are tuned, and it's just this beautiful sound. And we said to him, how long did it take you to tune it? It's all to do with the environment as well, and the acoustics within the environment. And he said, I didn't tune it. I had to get somebody in to do that because I don't know anything about tuning. We're like, wow, that's such an amazing, so removed from everything in our world.
Yeah, well, I mean, and also the ability to hit and bang things, you have a very different reaction with things that physically make noise. So I've just been handed a piece of paper with the Batshit brothers who make musical sculptures. I think that went by in the chat room as well, so I will check their stuff out, but I think that's well worth checking out too. I think we are probably approaching the final curtain, as it were, to the end of things. I do want to point, before I go, tomorrow we're having a Sonic Talk special at 4 p.m. where I'm talking to Pete Brown from Microsoft. As we know, Windows 10 has just come out, and there are aspects to the audio and MIDI APIs and the core technology behind that that will be very different from previous versions of Windows. And he's going to come on the show and kind of explain a bit about it and do some Q&A stuff. So I'm hoping if we can make the stream and everything all happen and get his technology sorted out, I'm sure. I mean, we're going to use Skype. Microsoft owns Skype. What could possibly go wrong? If you want to hang out there and join us and listen to what he's got to say and perhaps fire a question or two, please do join us then as well. I should have said this at the beginning of the show because not everybody makes it right through to the end of an hour and 30 minutes of musical chit chat, but do join us tomorrow for that as well. That's going to be a little Sonic Talk special. It's time to wrap up. I will say thanks again to iZotope. I should actually say we'll just quickly run the competition details again. If you want to win iZotope Trash, the hashtag shapeshifting and the hashtag @Trash2 to @SonicState and @iZotope Inc. We'll enter you into the competition. We'll announce that next week, so please do join us. In the meantime, I'm going to say goodbye to our guests. Ty, it's been a great pleasure to have you on. Thank you very much. It's
No,
always
thank you.
good to get flesh blood. I'm like a kind of vampirical chat host that needs fresh blood from time to time, and you've satiated my desire. I'm only assuming you're probably not a virgin, so it doesn't have exactly the perfect spiritual need I'm on.
Sorry. I feel bad now. I feel like I've let you down.
That's all right. I usually put it in the show notes to new attendees. They usually get to the top of the list. But anyway, Ty, thank you very much. It'd be great to have you on again at some point. I'm sure you've got a lot more to say that we'd love to hear as well. And
Thank you, it's been great.
And also say thank you to Dave Spears for suggesting Ty. I know that Robbie Bronneman also mentioned him, and I've just been very unproactive about doing it. And thanks to you, you were. So that's great. Thank you very much, Dave Spears. Of course, GForceSoftware.com for all your virtual instruments needs. And, of course, Corey Banks, who, as again, we haven't had for a little while, and we now had 2 in a row, which is fantastic. You're always welcome. Do check out what Corey's got on bboytechreport.com. You're on Facebook and Twitter and all those places, right?
Yep. Everywhere, all the social networks, or most of the popular ones, and as B-Boy Tech Report. So yeah, it's always a pleasure coming on, and 2 in a row. I'm batting 1,000 over here. Good talking to you again, Dave, and good to meet you, Ty. It's always good talking music with guys like me. So very cool.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everybody. That was Sonic Talk 414, which was dedicated to the AKG 414 microphone, just because it's been around since, I think it's 1957. Imagine that. That's almost as long as Sonic Talk itself. Right, that's it for 414. That's it for this week. I'm going to now fade to black, and we'll see you all next time. Or yellow, even.